Picture this. I'm standing in my backyard, staring at a pile of splintered wood and broken dreams, the last piece of my grandpa I had left, his cherished shed, now completely demolished. My heart sank as I saw his old tools scattered in the dirt, the photo of us hanging on the wall shattered beyond repair. And why? Because the HOA, led by a power-hungry Karen, decided they needed to run power lines through my property. No warning, no permission, just pure destruction. I was furious, but what they didn't know was that I wasn't going to let this slide. I turned their greed against them, and now, every single month, I'm cashing checks that make me richer than I ever imagined, all because they messed with the wrong person. Want to know how I did it? Let me take you back to the day it all started. Before we continue the story, let me know in the comments section from where you are watching. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Let me set the scene for you. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in a house that's been in my family for generations. It's a decent-sized property, with a big backyard that stretches out toward a line of oak trees. In the corner of that backyard stood my grandpa's shed. It wasn't much to look at, just a small wooden structure with a slanted roof, a creaky door and peeling paint. But to me it was everything. My grandpa built that shed with his own hands when I was just a kid. He was a carpenter, the kind of man who could turn a piece of rough timber into a work of art. I spent countless summers in that shed with him. He'd sit me on a stool, hand me a hammer and teach me how to drive a nail straight. "Slow and steady, kid," he'd say, his voice rough but warm. We built birdhouses, little toy boats, even a rickety chair that I was so proud of. He'd tell me stories about his life, how he grew up during the Great Depression, how he met my grandma at a county fair, how he built this house for our family. That shed was our sanctuary, a place where time stood still. When Grandpa passed away 5 years ago, I couldn't bring myself to change a thing about the shed. I kept his old tools on the workbench exactly where he left them. I hung a photo of us on the wall, me, a scrawny 10-year-old with a gap-toothed grin, and him, smiling proudly as we held up a birdhouse we'd made together. Every time I missed him, I'd go out there, sit on that same stool and just feel him with me. That shed wasn't just a building, it was my connection to him, a piece of my heart. Fast forward to a few months ago. I'm sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, when I get a letter in the mail from the HOA, the Homeowners Association. I'd always known they were a pain with their endless rules about lawn height and mailbox colors, but I mostly stayed out of their way. The letter said they were planning to install new power lines to improve the neighborhood's electrical grid, and my property was in the direct path. To make that happen, they needed to remove an obstruction on my land, my grandpa's shed. I felt my stomach drop. Remove the shed? They had to be kidding. I called the HOA president, a woman named Karen. Yes, the most stereotypical Karen you can imagine. She answered the phone with this fake sweet tone, but I could hear the arrogance underneath. I told her there was no way I'd let them touch that shed. It was on my property, it wasn't hurting anyone, and it meant the world to me. I begged her to find another route for the power lines. Karen just laughed. "Oh honey," she said, "that old shack is an eyesore. It's falling apart and we're doing you a favor by getting rid of it. Besides, this project is for the greater good of the community. You'll thank us later." I tried to explain the sentimental value, how it was all I had left of my grandpa, but she cut me off. "Sentimental value doesn't pay the bills," she snapped. "If you don't cooperate, we'll fine you until you do. And if that doesn't work, we'll take legal action." Then she hung up. I was shaking with anger. I decided to attend the next HOA meeting to fight for the shed in person. The meeting was held in the community center, and the room was packed with neighbors, most of whom looked just as annoyed with the HOA as I was. Karen stood at the front, wearing a bright pink blazer, her arms crossed like she owned the place. I raised my hand and made my case. I told them about my grandpa, about the memories, about how that shed was a part of my family's history. I even offered to pay for a survey to find another route for the power lines, out of my own pocket. But Karen wasn't having it. She rolled her eyes and said, "We've already made our decision. The power lines are going through your property, and that shed is coming down. End of discussion." A few neighbors tried to support me, but Karen shut them down too. She even had the audacity to say, "If you don't like it, you can move." I left that meeting feeling defeated, but I wasn't ready to give up. A week later, I had to leave town for a work conference. I was gone for just 2 days, but when I got back, I found a voicemail from my neighbor Tom. His voice was frantic. "You need to get home now," he said. "The HOA sent a bulldozer to your place. They're tearing down the shed." I dropped everything and raced home, my heart pounding in my chest. When I pulled into my driveway, I couldn't believe my eyes. The shed was gone. All that was left was a pile of broken wood and debris. The bulldozer was still there, its engine rumbling, and a couple of workers were standing around looking uncomfortable. I ran to the backyard, my shoes crunching on the shattered remains of my grandpa's legacy. His tools were scattered in the dirt. His favorite hammer, the one he'd used to teach me, was bent in half. The photo of us was lying in the rubble, the glass frame shattered, the picture torn. I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face. It felt like I'd lost my grandpa all over again. Tom came over, his face pale. He told me Karen had shown up with the workers that morning, claiming they had every right to do this. She'd even laughed when one of the workers asked if they should wait for me to get back. "He'll get over it," she'd said. I couldn't speak. I just sat there, holding the torn photo, feeling like my whole world had been ripped apart. After the initial shock wore off, anger took over. I wasn't going to let Karen and the HOA get away with this. They thought they could just destroy my grandpa's shed and walk away like nothing happened? Not on my watch. I decided to dig deeper into this power lines project. Something about Karen's attitude didn't sit right with me. She was too smug, too confident. I had a gut feeling there was more to this story. I started by talking to some of the neighbors who'd been at the HOA meeting. A few of them had overheard Karen talking about the power lines project with a man in a suit a few weeks earlier. They didn't know who he was, but they said Karen seemed awfully friendly with him. That got me thinking, maybe this wasn't just about improving the electrical grid. I went to the county records office and pulled up the permits for the project. It took hours of sifting through paperwork, but I finally found what I was looking for. The power lines weren't being installed for the neighborhood's benefit. The HOA had struck a deal with a big utility company. The company was paying the HOA a huge sum of money to run the lines through our neighborhood because it was the shortest route to a new development they were building nearby. And guess who was getting a cut of that money? Karen and a few other HOA board members. They were pocketing thousands of dollars, while the rest of us were left to deal with the consequences. My shed had been in the way of their profit, so they decided to get rid of it, no matter what it meant to me. I was livid. This wasn't about the greater good. It was about greed, plain and simple. Karen had destroyed my grandpa's shed for her own financial gain, and she didn't even have the decency to tell me the truth. But now that I knew what was really going on, I had a plan. I was going to make her regret ever stepping foot on my property. First, I needed to hit the HOA where it hurt, legally. I hired a lawyer, a friend of mine from college who specialized in property law. We filed a lawsuit against the HOA for emotional distress, illegal demolition, and violating my property rights. I had all the evidence I needed. The permits, the shady deal with the utility company, even statements from neighbors who'd seen Karen's behavior. My lawyer was confident we had a strong case, but I knew it would take time. And I wasn't done yet. I wanted to do more than just win a lawsuit. I wanted to turn this whole situation around in my favor. While the lawsuit was in motion, I started looking into my property's history. My grandpa had always told me our land was special, but I'd never really understood what he meant. I found a box of his old papers in the attic. Surveys, deeds, and geological reports from decades ago. That's when I discovered something incredible. The corner of my property where the shed had been was sitting on top of a rare mineral deposit. Something called lithium, which is used in batteries for electric cars. It was valuable, really valuable, and the utility company had no idea it was there. Neither did the HOA. I saw an opportunity. Lithium is in high demand right now, and I knew there were companies out there who'd pay a fortune to access it. I reached out to a rival utility company, one that had been competing with the company Karen made her deal with. I told them about the lithium deposit and offered to lease them the land for a small power substation they could build there. In exchange, they'd pay me a monthly fee, a very generous monthly fee. They jumped at the chance. Within weeks, we had a contract in place and they started construction on the substation. Here's where it gets even better. The rival company's substation meant the original power lines project, the one Karen and the HOA were banking on, had to be rerouted. My land was now occupied, and the detour would cost the original utility company millions of dollars. They were furious and they turned on the HOA demanding their money back. Karen and her cronies were left scrambling, their shady deal falling apart at the seams. Meanwhile, the lawsuit went to court. The judge was appalled by the HOA's actions. My lawyer presented everything: the emotional toll of losing the shed, the HOA's illegal demolition, and their corrupt deal with the utility company. The courtroom was silent as I took the stand and told the judge about my grandpa, about the memories we'd made in that shed, about how Karen had laughed as she ordered it torn down. I held up the torn photo of me and my grandpa, my voice breaking as I spoke. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. The judge ruled in my favor. The HOA was ordered to pay me a massive settlement. $150,000 for emotional distress and damages. Karen was personally fined for her role in the illegal demolition, and she was removed from her position as HOA president. The whole neighborhood cheered when they heard the news. Karen's reputation was in tatters and she couldn't even look me in the eye anymore. But the real victory came from the deal I'd made with the rival utility company. That monthly fee I mentioned? It's $10,000 a month and it's guaranteed for the next 20 years. Every month I get a check in the mail and every time I cash it I think about how Karen's greed backfired on her. With the settlement money I built a new shed in the same spot, a bigger, better one. I filled it with my grandpa's tools, hung a new photo of us on the wall, and even added a little plaque that says, "In memory of Grandpa, forever my hero." I turned the rest of the settlement into a savings fund for my future, and with the monthly checks, I'm living more comfortably than I ever thought possible. Now when I walk through my neighborhood, I see Karen's house with a for sale sign out front. Word is she's moving away, probably because she can't handle the shame of what happened. The HOA has new leadership, and they've been a lot more reasonable since the lawsuit. As for me, I'm doing better than ever. I sit in my new shed sometimes looking at that photo of me and Grandpa, and I feel like he's smiling down on me. I turned a tragedy into a triumph, and I'm living proof that you don't mess with someone who's got nothing left to lose. So, if you're dealing with an HOA, or anyone who thinks they can walk all over you, don't give up. Fight back. Get creative. Use their own mistakes against them. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just getting even, it's coming out on top. And trust me, there's nothing sweeter than cashing a check every month, knowing it's all because they underestimated me. Thanks for listening to my story. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.